Good evening, and welcome back to After the Buzzer. I'm Couper Moorhead, Heat Insider. We're about to talk about the Miami Heat's 106-103 loss to the Milwaukee Bucks in NBA Cup play. We'll talk about the NBA Cup ramifications at the end. But before we get to that, we'll talk a little bit about the game. It was pretty exciting. The building was alive in the second half when the Miami Heat made a big run. We'll talk about Terry Rozier in a new role, temporary maybe, but a new role for now. And then we'll talk about Damian Lillard and how he affected the game, how Miami's defense changed on him, and how that defense changed the game and almost got Miami a win. So first, the game in general. Look, this is kind of the quintessential one team, oftentimes the road team, oftentimes the team, outmanned a little bit, you want to say, just because Giannis Antetokounmpo, who was playing at an MVP level, was ruled out. He was probable, then he was questionable, and then he was ruled out all in about the last 90 minutes up until game time. So this is that quintessential, the outmanned or undermanned from their perspective team gets hot early, they go up double digits, and then they just kind of ride that early hot shooting all the way to the end, even as the home team starts clawing back. It probably didn't look that great on television when the Bucks were shooting 60% from three and they were going up 15, 16, 17 in the first half. But you could still kind of feel the Heat were in the game. In the first half, the Bucks were 60% from three. Dame Lillard hit his first three of the game. He had 17 points in the first 6 minutes. He was, hitting everything. But even with Milwaukee shooting that well, even with them up double digits at halftime, the Bucks only had one attempt in the restricted area at the break. So they were almost all of their offense was coming from that hot shooting, which usually tells you most teams aren't going to shoot 60% from three for an entire game. You might do that once a year. You expect the shooting to come down a bit. And if there's no foundation to that offense, if there aren't very many free throws, if there aren't a lot of restricted area attempts, the bottom can kind of fall out if the threes aren't falling. So there was reason to feel pretty good about the Heat, especially with the way the Heat were getting to the line. The Heat were getting to the paint, beating their man, lots of drives, lots of kicks. They were running their offense. There was a reason to feel like the run was coming. It didn't happen immediately at the beginning of the third. Dame hit a couple more threes. Milwaukee goes up 20. In a lot of situations, that's where the game starts to slip away. But then immediately the run comes, and from then on, the defense came alive. The building came alive. This was a great crowd tonight. These games are so much fun. I've been doing this for a long time, but when the building feels like it did tonight, you feel like you've only been doing this for a week. The run comes, it feels as like an extension of what was happening in the first half. Milwaukee struggles to answer for a long period of time. They're just getting random buckets here and there, here and there, here and there. But then, Lillard gets to the line a couple times down the stretch. AJ Green hits a couple big threes. Milwaukee just holds on for dear life in those final minutes. And Miami they were right there. Terry Rozier, we'll talk about him in a second, hits a couple big shots. They just couldn't get that magic to happen. Spo ran that same spread end-of-game play that worked last game against Dallas, worked in Minnesota. It was that same concept, that same look. And Jimmy almost sprung free right going towards the rim again, but Milwaukee defended a little bit better. Tyler still got a decent shot at a three. It missed. Terry's shot at three with 1 second left was a bit more of a desperation shot. That missed. Milwaukee takes it. Credit Milwaukee. They're down their best player. They held on, just rode that hot shooting from the start. But, for most of this game, you could feel the Heat coming. You could feel them about to take over to take the lead. They just never quite got over that hump at the end. But still a pretty fun game. Now let's talk about Terry Rozier for a second. Terry started all 12 games before he went down with his foot injury. A lot of talk early in the year from Eric Spoelstra about finding out what he, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, what they can do in the starting lineup as a four-man group. And for a while it was Nikola Jovic starting with as the fifth. But then Terry gets injured, misses a couple games, and sometimes Spo will say, okay, slide back in the starting lineup. But the starting lineup had been reasonably good the last couple games with Duncan Robinson in and Haywood Highsmith. So Spo says, let's try and bring him off the bench. Some players aren't going to respond well to that. Terry tonight responded about as well as you could ask anybody to. He was pretty much the reason that Miami was even in the game in those final 30 to 60 seconds. Terry went 5 of 5 from the field in the fourth quarter, 3 of 3 from 3, hit some threes in spot situations, weak side kickouts. Terry's there, make the shot. He had a great drive and finish over Brook Lopez, who was not an easy guy to finish over. And look, credit Terry for playing well, playing hard off the bench. He took on the Dame Lillard assignment at the end there too. He was playing hard defensively, played well there too. I just want to say, Terry had a cold start to the year. Coming to this game, he was a little bit below, I think, 40% from the field, low 30s from 3. Those aren't numbers that are going to keep up all year long. And, in contrast, Tyler starts really hot. Tyler's playing great, but Tyler's also not going to shoot that hot. You're going to come down. Water will always find its level. Terry is too good of a scorer to have percentages like that throughout the whole year. He has a long history of scoring. He has a long history of being a very good shooter, off the catch, off the dribble. That's what he does. This is why Terry Rozier is in the league. So it was always going to come. The Knicks were going to come. And it's just a matter of time. Good on him to responding to the bench role and then allowing that positive energy to feed in to his shooting percentages, which came tonight. So the Dame conundrum tonight. Damian Lillard, look, he's a great player, great shooter, great scorer. He started the game off supernova, Super Saiyan, hitting everything. Goes 3 of 3 from 3 in the first, felt like 2 minutes. He had 17 points in the first 6 minutes. Sometimes you can't do much against a player like that. The Heat didn't feel great about their defense tonight, but part of that is a great player making great shots. Look, the Heat started off in drop coverage, their base coverage. Lillard will usually do pretty well against that because it gives him a little space to get his shots off. They got out of that really quickly. You have a feeling the Heat were just showing their base coverage and then getting to other things they do. But look, first quarter, Dame gets Bam on a switch. Usually you're going to feel really great about that if you're the Heat. Bam on a switch on anybody. And look, that's just a great shot. What are you going to do about that? As the game goes on, though, the Heat started to change up their coverages on him in interesting ways. There was the base drop coverage. There were the switches. They started having guys up at the level, so Dame couldn't get the quick 3 off of contact. They started blitzing him. They blitzed him with Kevin Love before Love went out with back spasms. Khalil Ware filled in for Bam Adebayo in the second half when Bam had foul trouble. Khalil Ware was blitzing a little bit. But really what changed the game was when Eric Spoelstra went to these long shows. And now a show is where the big man defender kind of slides with the ball handler and keeps going. You can do a short show out, show and recover. A long show is where the big will just keep going with the ball handler as long as it takes for the original defender, whoever was on Dame, to recover, and then the big can get back into the paint and recover from there. So they were doing that with the Ware. They were doing that with the Bam. They were doing that with small pick and rolls. Sometimes they switched. But they were really throwing the kitchen sink at Dame. Dame still hit a couple of threes early in the third to go up to 22. But in those last 20 minutes, once the Heat really committed to 2 on the ball, but not overcommitting with the blitz, because Dame, we've seen blitzes a lot of times. He and Steph have probably seen more than anybody else in the league. He'll hit that pocket pass. He will make an attack pass versus what they did to Jared McCain, Philadelphia's rookie, a couple of weeks ago, where McCain was making escape passes out of it. Dame will make attack passes out of the blitz. So they didn't want to fully put 2 on the ball. They wanted to show long and recover. In the last 20 minutes of the game, as they did that, they committed to getting the ball out of Lillard's hands without giving him attack passing angles. Milwaukee had an offensive rating of 83.3 in those last 20 minutes, and Lillard, who had over 30 points with 20 minutes to go, was 0 of 3 in those last 20 minutes. That 0 is nice, but the 3 is almost more important. That means he wasn't taking a lot of shots. Still got to the line a handful of times once he was kind of forced to drive because the defense was pressing up on him. He'll do that. He had a couple nice assists. But remember, Milwaukee was without Giannis Antetokounmpo. So without him, they didn't really have a downhill attacking guy to take that pass when Miami had 2 on the ball briefly. Milwaukee didn't have a guy who could go down and make a quick play. So the ball was getting to Milwaukee's shooters, but as long as Miami's closeouts were there really well, on time, on target with the closeout, the ball the offense got stagnant. They stalled out. Guys got caught with, a dead dribble, didn't know where to go. The shot clock was getting short. Milwaukee had a lot of really rough offensive possessions in the second half, which is why Miami made their run. They were starting to play off their defense as they really want to do. That all comes from putting 2 on the ball with Dame. Now, Milwaukee did score a couple of important baskets off of that same coverage down the stretch. 2 on the ball to Dame. He draws multiple defenders, including one off the strong side corner. A.J. Green hits a corner 3. Next possession, 2 on the ball to Dame. Ball gets to the weak side corner. Swings again to A.J. Green on long closeouts. The ball was still defended pretty well. A.J. Green made a tough shot, but it all started that possession. The ball got moving to where it needed to go because there were 2 on the ball with Dame. They got the ball out of his hands. Fun chess match with Lillard. As unbelievably hot as he was early on, the Heat did what they usually do. They don't give him the same look. They get aggressive, get the ball out of his hands, make everybody else beat them. Just watch for that. If anytime there's a player, especially a guard, who's hitting a lot of shots early, Eric Spoelstra is going to tend to find a way to get the ball out of their hands. Almost worked out for them really well. Didn't quite work out for them at the end. So, not the result you want if you're the Heat, but an interesting game as far as how they covered Dame. Nice to see Terry Rozier play the way he did coming off the bench. We'll see if that's a temporary role or a permanent one. Spo didn't really make it quite clear. It's a long season. A lot of changes can still be made. And the team falls to 1-2 in NBA Cup play. They can still get to knockout rounds. They have to beat Charlotte. They need a couple other teams, not only in their group, but in other groups, to get to 2 losses. So then point differential comes into play for tiebreakers. I'm not going to explain every scenario right now. Some of the teams still have 2 games left. It'll start looking like the board, the Pepe Sylvia board behind me if I get into all that, so we won't for now. Just know that, getting to 2 losses in NBA Cup play, it's going to be really tough, but you are not outright eliminated with 2 losses. The Heat are still plus 10 in point differential. A big win in Charlotte really puts them in play. They just need a bunch of things to break right. In other words, sort of like playoffs at the end of the year. They don't control their own destiny necessarily, but it could still happen. And that's that. Miami loses to Milwaukee 106-103. We will have more after the buzzers, after every home game for the rest of the season, and I hope you join us for all of those. That's all. Take care. Good night.